So let's first take out the important components for our functional view. The functional view concentrates on what is done, on the kind of activities. So when you see here the process with the 3 steps: test components, assemble device, and test the device, that means that you somehow have to have a support for these activities in your ERP system, in your enterprise information system. So the first step maybe is to test the components, and in this step, what would you do? You would just go to the workstation where usually testing the components is performed, and you would maybe require the purchase order from the customer. You would not require the entire purchase order, but an excerpt out of that, because you need the product first, type of product, to know which components you should check. And you would also need the number of products which are ordered by the customer. And if you know these two information, if you know what product and how many products need to be manufactured, then you know how many components you have to test. And finally, this is information you would require in your function for test components. And then you might also produce some data. You might produce data with regards to the test result of the components. The test result could be that, well, the component is functioning like specified. So you could use the component later on for the assembly, or unfortunately an error happened and the component is not usable for the assembly. And if you organize your processes well, then you would also record these test results. So you would not only require the information of the number and type of products, like said before, you would also need a possibility to input the information about the test results. And then you save these information about the test results, and you use these maybe for statistics. Or if you have special components which are checked especially for that customer, then you might also realize a track and trace, so that you can follow the trace of the parts, and you can record all parts which are assembled into a product, and then you would use these information about your testing. When was it tested, by whom, maybe also, for the assembly and for the history of the product. Our view here still shows in the blue part which functions should be available in our software, in our ERP system. So assembling the device is the next step. And assembling means that you take some components, you have a checklist, or you have a list with working instructions, and following these working instructions, you would assemble the device. Assembling the device from the components which were tested before, and using this checklist. So what would you need in this function in the software? You would need maybe then the exact number of the components, not only the amount of components, but also the ID of the components. Maybe if you checked them before, you checked them regarding the special order here from the customer. So you would then use these components checked before for the assembly. You would also need the checklist. The checklist which tells you what to do. so some additional information, not only part information, and you would then produce a certain electronic device. And maybe the assembly process also assigns a number to the electronic device. So at the end, you might record the number in the ERP system. You might record that you produced a certain electronic device, and this now has the number XYZ, a serial number maybe. And the last step here is testing the device. You produce the device, you produced many devices maybe, and then you would check them if they work properly. And that means that the electronic device itself is used, and as a result, you would generate a test report. So again, this test report is important information for your ERP system. And talking about this function, test device, means that you need a possibility to input some information, some measurements maybe, which are generated during the testing, and then from these measurements the test report is generated. So you put in some data, and you might also refer in this function to the electronic devices which were produced before, so that you take these very devices for the testing. So basically 3 functions, so to say, which are required here and which are important for the production process. In the lower part, you also see that there is a reference to resources. For example, the device assembler in the production department and the measurement device. And you could also include these information into the functions, so that you say, no, the device assembler has this functionality, and only the device assembler can access this functionality. This would also be important for the function which is somehow to foresee in your ERP system. The product or the service view concentrates on the question, what is the result or the intermediate result in the process? Or also, what is required as a pre-result, as a product or as a service, which is required in a certain process step. So now the blue things which are highlighted here, the order, the components, the electronic device, and then the order which is done. These are the parts which can be understood as a service or a pre-product, which is required in certain process steps. So for example, let's take out the components. The components, they are maybe not produced in this company, but they are a product used in a certain product, in a certain production step. So for testing the components, you need obviously components. And for assembling the device, you also need components. So you refer to these components, and these components are then part of the product or the service view. The same with the electronic device. The electronic device is finally a result of the step assemble device. So it comes out of this step, and it is used, or it is required in the next step, test device. And then you could refer to the electronic device as a product or an intermediate product within your within your process steps. Intermediate product because it's not tested yet. It's an untested electronic device maybe. And then you test it, and then you have a tested electronic device, and that's the final product. And the final product then is maybe also used with the order which is done. So at the end you have the order which is done, and it's also a kind of outcome of the process or of the process steps, and you finally can assign it also to this product or service view. So regarding our small process, we would have the 4 different products or services or information products also, which are important for us. First one is the order, which is accepted. Second is the component, which is used in testing the component and is in assembling the component, in assembling the device. Then the electronic device, which is an outcome of the assembly process step. And finally, the result of the overall process is the order which is done. So different results or different resources regarding the material which are referred here in this small business process. In the blue areas, you see now the part which is important for the data view of our ARIS house, of our ARIS method. So data, what does it mean? Actually, we talked about data, we talked about the relation to information and to knowledge. And here in the data view, we concentrate on all the aspects which somehow contain these information, these data. Data which are important for the process, for the execution of the business process. What you can see here is that, for example, the customer, the order, if it's accepted or if it's done already, then the order is important. You have work instructions, you have checklists for the process steps. These are information. These are written on paper, of course, or maybe printed to paper, but basically contain information. And these data can be important for the process in different forms. So either they are in an electronic form, then they are in the ERP system, in the information system, like the customer information or the order information, or they can be printed, like I said, the checklists which need to be worked through for the assembling, for example. Then they might be in the classical format, in the paper-based format, and there is non-electronic. Today, actually, work lists, work instructions, checklists are more and more available in an electronic format also, so that using paper for the work instructions is not done that much anymore. You could, for example, present the work instructions on a mobile device or on a fixed monitor, which is close to the workstation where the people perform the process steps for the assembly, for example. So what you can see here is that, for example, the order is an important part in the data view, but when you remember from the product, the service view, then the order is also part of the other view. Might be. This is not impossible. Here in the data view, we concentrate on the data which are important for the order, for example. And as you see also, the events are part of the data view as well, like order accepted, one of the first events which trigger the entire business process, or the device is assembled, the final event which marks somehow the end of the business process. Both events are part of the data view, because somehow you can describe these events with data. The organization is important for the business process as well. The organization with the employees, the organization with the departments, and the organization with the general resources like the machines or the devices which are required for the business process. So here in the blue area you see the job or the job description, so to say, which performs the activities, test components, this activity assemble device and test device. And there are these connections between the person, the job, the device assembler, and these activities. So that means that the device assembler is responsible for executing these process steps. And the device assembler, as usual in the organization, is assigned to a certain department. So in this case, the production department, and we also depict here the production as the department, as a kind of part of the organization here. If you need devices, if you need other resources like machines, devices, then you can use a special symbol to represent these devices, and you also can connect these devices to the activities. This might be important if you want to assign devices to special activities. Then you also have to know what devices, what machines, what tools are required for these activities, and therefore you mention them also in your modeling, in your model for the business process. And there is, okay, for the process step test device, for example, we have to use some resources, and here especially the resource, the measurement device. The other process steps like the testing and the assembling, here in our case, do not need any machines or any devices which are to mention, which are important. And finally here, as the central view, you will see it in a minute, in the ARIS house, as a central view you have the control view. And the control view actually concentrates on the cooperation of all the process steps and all the events. And there is the flow of the activities, so to say, is mentioned, is modeled. So you somehow model, you somehow tell what steps follow on each other, and also what initiates a certain process steps and what comes out of a certain process step. What you also can model in this control view is the material flow, such that you know how the material, the physical goods in your process move in your process. Where are they important? Where are they not important? Maybe also. And this control view actually has a kind of centralized role for your modeling, for your business process model, because therein some different aspects contribute to this overall cooperation. And for a possible analysis, you also would look into this control view, because then you would see how the things connect, and maybe you would also see where redundancies are, or where work is done twice instead of only one time. So the control view, as you see in a minute, is situated in the center and somehow connects the different views in one aggregated view in this control view.